On 19 September 1356, near Poitiers in western France, two exhausted armies met in a battle that still matters because it reshaped the Hundred Years' War and exposed the limits of medieval power. The fight was not isolated. It grew from a wider struggle over crowns, land, and legitimacy, where raids and ransom had become as important as set-piece battles. By the mid-14th century, France and England were locked in a long contest across seas and borders. Power depended on alliances, money, and the ability to keep armies supplied far from home. France had suffered repeated shocks from war and plague, while English commanders learned to strike quickly and live off the land. That imbalance made every campaign feel urgent and fragile. The English expedition was led by a young prince under heavy pressure to prove himself. The French side was driven by royal responsibility, honor, and the need to stop another devastating raid. Neither leader could afford hesitation. One needed a victory that justified a dangerous campaign, while the other had to defend the realm and restore confidence after years of humiliation. The armies themselves were mixed forces of men-at-arms, archers, crossbowmen, and camp followers. Their strength depended on discipline, food, horses, and the morale that comes from believing retreat is impossible. Weapons varied, but the battle would hinge on a few familiar tools: lances, swords, shields, arrows, and the defensive use of terrain. In the 14th century, preparation often mattered more than spectacle. Logistics shaped the campaign from the start. Marching armies needed fodder, water, and time, and every mile added strain to horses, men, and command decisions. The English force had been raiding deep into French territory, moving south and then back north with prisoners and plunder. The French army tried to cut off that retreat before it could escape. As both sides converged, the landscape narrowed the choices. Rivers, hedges, and broken ground limited movement, turning the march toward Poitiers into a race against exhaustion. The battlefield itself offered a natural trap. Slopes, vineyards, and uneven ground favored a defending force that could stand firm and force an attacker to advance under pressure. Weather added uncertainty. Late summer light could shift quickly, and dust, fatigue, and heat would have made every movement slower and every command harder to hear. The English position was chosen to force the French to attack uphill through constrained ground. That kind of defense could turn a smaller force into a stubborn obstacle. The French plan reflected confidence in numbers and momentum. They expected pressure, repeated assaults, and perhaps a breakthrough before the defenders could recover. The English plan was different: hold, absorb, and punish advances with missiles and disciplined counterattacks. It was a strategy built on patience under extreme strain. At the opening, skirmishers and missile troops tested each side's nerves. The first exchanges were less about decisive damage than about measuring resolve and revealing weak points. The French advanced in stages, trying to keep formation while moving into difficult ground. Every pause gave the defenders more time to steady themselves and choose their targets. Pressure built at the center of the French attack. Once the leading elements were committed, it became harder to stop the momentum without exposing those behind them. The English line held because the ground worked in its favor. Archers and men-at-arms could concentrate force where the French had to come forward in a limited space. Then came the decisive movement. A French effort to turn the English position was met by a sudden counterstroke. That shift disrupted the attack and made coordination far more difficult. Once the attack lost its shape, the battle began to unravel. Men who had advanced bravely found themselves crowded, confused, and unable to regroup quickly enough. The English exploited that confusion with disciplined pressure rather than a reckless chase. In medieval battle, order at the critical moment could matter more than sheer size. As the French front faltered, the field became crowded with retreating men, exhausted horses, and commanders trying to restore control. The battle was no longer a single plan, but several failing ones at once. The collapse was not instant, but it was decisive. Once the French lost the initiative, the English position became a trap that turned resistance into surrender. The aftermath was striking. A major French force had been beaten, and the political shock reached far beyond the field near Poitiers. The captured and defeated included men of high status, which made the result even more important. Ransom, negotiation, and prestige now mattered as much as the fighting itself. For France, the defeat deepened uncertainty in a kingdom already under strain. For England, it created a rare moment of triumph that could be used in diplomacy and propaganda. In the years that followed, the battle helped confirm that English armies could still win major victories in France. Yet it also showed how fragile those gains were without lasting political settlement. The wider war continued, but Poitiers became a reference point for commanders studying terrain, discipline, and the risks of attacking a prepared position. Its lessons echoed across later campaigns. Historians still debate details of troop numbers, exact deployments, and how much the outcome depended on terrain versus command choices. The broad result, however, is not in doubt. Some accounts emphasize archery, others stress the French decision-making, and still others the exhaustion of a long campaign. Most agree that Poitiers was a battle where timing mattered enormously. It is also important to avoid oversimplifying medieval warfare. Victory did not come from a single weapon or a single heroic act, but from a convergence of choices and conditions. The site near Poitiers today is quieter, but the landscape still carries the logic of the battle. Gentle slopes and open ground remain the best clues to what happened there. Modern visitors encounter a place of memory rather than spectacle. The field invites reflection on leadership, endurance, and the cost of decisions made under pressure. Seen from a distance of centuries, the battle endures because it reveals how geography, logistics, and morale can decide history as surely as numbers on a field.